You're watching YouTube, the cable access of the 21st century. It's Wednesday, it's 4 p.m. where I am, and it's time to talk about movies and answer your questions. Welcome to Dan's World. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Excuse me. Oh, my voice is going out already. Welcome to another edition of Dan's World. I am live here on a Wednesday afternoon. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Always the question that I ask at the beginning of every stream, because honestly, it can be a bit of a crapshoot sometime. I saw the bestest one ever may have jinxed me already. Here's to a tech issue free stream. Here's hoping. I will say I did actually do a lot more testing, and I know that there is a slight delay between the picture and the audio. It looks like it's a camera thing. I tried different configurations of, is it the microphone plugged in this way, plugged in that way. It looks like it's a camera thing, some sort of a, back and forth with that. And to correct that, I may have to do a capture card and everything else, which would require some setup and a little bit of extra funding. So I may not be able to do that right away, but I am going to try to correct that in the future. Hopefully it's not a terribly loathsome thing to deal with in the meantime, but I am aware of it. I understand, but we're looking better than we have been. Knock on wood, we're still going to stay that way for the rest of the stream. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do this week, what I want to talk about. There's no real news story that was jumping out at me. And I thought, well, I haven't really done one of these. This is, I think, the 15th live stream I've done. So I've been doing this for about 4 months, and I've never really done one where I turn it officially over to you, the viewers. It's kind of an AMA type thing, but I just thought this might be kind of an interesting thing. Maybe once a month or once every couple months, we do one of these shows where you ask the questions. I don't have a pre-prepared rant or anything like that. And we can see what you want to talk about. So you can leave your comments. If you send in a super chat, then I will definitely get to your comments. And I've already looked at a few that have come in. I'm going to try to go through and find some more as we go through, especially if we need some as we get into the show. So yeah, I wanted to just kind of talk, see what you wanted to talk about instead of inventing something that I think that you might want to talk about. So let's jump right into it. And like I said, there were a few that I was able to catch before the show, and then I'll try to catch some during. And as I said, if you want to leave a super chat, we'll definitely get to it. We're going to start with the Steven Spielberg question because, of course, why not? That's a great thing to start with on this channel. This is from Brian Percival. Aside from Crystal Skull, I think Spielberg's filmography from the 2000s is very underrated and doesn't get the praise it deserves. And I actually was thinking about that, and I went back and looked at it. So this is everything from the 21st century, from past the year 2000. We've got AI, artificial intelligence, meticulously crafted. Not necessarily, the best movie for me on every level, but I think incredibly well done, especially for its time. Minority Report, great sci-fi movie. Catch Me If You Can, one of Spielberg's best movies, and I think that it's only kind of grown in prominence as it's gone. Then we have The Terminal, 2004. Everyone says they hate that movie. I don't hate that movie. It's slight, but I think it's got its own kind of charm. War of the Worlds, I don't dislike as much as a lot of people do. I think it's a really solid sci-fi movie, especially the first 2 acts. Munich, a really underrated Steven Spielberg film. It doesn't necessarily feel like a Spielberg film, but it's very good. Then we've got Crystal Skull. That's the one that gets all the ink. I don't really like that one. Adventures of Tintin. I don't love that movie, and I don't dislike it, but I think that if I was a kid in 2011 when 1010 came out, then I probably would like that movie a lot more. War Horse, solid movie, not one of his best movies, but a good movie. Lincoln, an Oscar winner for Daniel Day-Lewis. I think that's a pretty solid movie. Bridge of Spies, another Oscar winner for Mark Rylance. I think that's a solid movie. The BFG, I did not like at all. The Post, I think, is okay. Ready Player One, I enjoy. I know a lot of people don't. I enjoy that movie. West Side Story, I loved. I think that is a great take on the classic movie musical. And then The Fabelmans, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but a lot of people did. It was a multi-Oscar nominee. And so I think you're right in the sense that in the 21st century, Steven Spielberg has generated a lot of really, really good movies. The problem is the 25 years that preceded the year 2000, he was making generational hits. And I think because Steven Spielberg has not generated a generational hit post 2000, then people are like, oh, well, he's really kind of fallen off. The majority of movies that he's made in the 2000s have been very good, or at least good. It's just that he hasn't made another Jurassic Park or another E.T. or another Indiana Jones, or at least not the kind that people enjoy. So I would agree. I do think it's underrated in the sense that people kind of dismiss it, but it's only because he's not been making the most popular movies of all time. No one can live up to that standard. So I'll agree with you there, Brian. I agree. This is one that I did, that I noticed before the show started from Multicam Diaz. What do you think of the status of storytelling in Hollywood? I feel like the quality has dropped tremendously. I think that it has in many places, and I think a lot of it is franchise filmmaking and studios playing it safe. You know, if you watch my reviews, the consistent screenwriting issues that you see in some of the biggest movies just drive me crazy. I think that there are still some great stories to be told in Hollywood, but I think that a lot of it has fallen victim to the franchise mentality, to the sort of corporate mentality of trying to guarantee the best possible product, which often means you get a compromised product. I think that it has been on the decline, but there are still some great stories out there. Adam Wetstein asks, are you happy that you left Cali and returned to, I'm assuming, a return to a plain state? Well, first of all, not to get all technical on you, but Arkansas is not a plain state. I actually live in the Ozark Mountain area, as I hit the microphone, of Arkansas. I don't think Arkansas would be considered a plain state. That would be Nebraska, Kansas, parts of Oklahoma, maybe parts of Missouri, but even that. We would be a southern state. I'm in the Ozarks. Am I happy that I'm happy with where I am right now? I am close to family. I am close to friends that I've had my entire life. I'm close to my mom, who's now retired, and I can be there for her. I can be there for them, and close to my nephews and everything else. I have a house, which I could not have ever had in California. Certainly not, maybe renting, maybe. Not, but not like as I'm currently doing. I doubt that I could even afford to rent a house in California. I can have a house here. There are things that I miss. Obviously, my friends. I have so many friends from California that I miss incredibly. I do get to see them when I go back 2 or 3 times a year, and it makes my job a little bit more difficult because I don't have access to every single screening, and especially at awards season, I still get invites for all of these movies that are playing in California. These are movies that I often have to drive 3 to 5 hours to see. So that makes it more difficult. So there are some professional challenges, and I do miss my friends, but I'm very happy with my life here. And even if I had a chance to move back to California, I don't think that I would, because it would mean leaving what I have here behind, and I really am very precious. What I have here is very dear to me and very precious to me, and I'm happy that I'm able to be here, because you get older, and it's not everything is your job, not everything is your career. There are other things that you learn to value, I think, a little bit more as you get older, and those things are here for me. So yes, I would say generally I am happy. F for Film, thank you for the super chat, says, favorite film critic on YouTube. I appreciate that. Any thoughts on the glimpses we've gotten of live action One Piece season 2? Will you check out the anime? I mean, I liked the first season of live action of One Piece, the live action show, and the second season looks to be a continuation of that. Now, I feel like I have to go back and watch season 1 again, because the gap between these seasons is so wide. We're talking 2, 3, 4 years between seasons of television, and then you get 8 episodes, and then it's done for another 3 years. And I know that there are considerations with strikes, etc. Hopefully that will be less common as we move forward. But it looked like a fun continuation of the first season. I don't know if I would check out the anime, just because that would be literal. I mean, the amount of time that I have to watch things, for me to fit it in with other stuff, it would be years for me to finish. And it's not even done, I don't think, the One Piece anime. So I don't think I would jump into something that I know that I couldn't finish. But I will be checking out season 2 when it's released. And looks just as fun as the first season. This is from Rochester Producers. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about music. What are your favorite genres, favorite bands? Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it. I have songs that I enjoy. There are certain artists that I enjoy. I'm not a huge music guy. I enjoy music, but I've never been like super into music in the sense of like, oh, I love going to concerts and I have every album by this band or I love every song by this band. It's more picking and choosing. So I love to listen to a lot of the music that I listened to when I was growing up because there is some nostalgia attached to it, and I think it's legitimately good music. But that's because I'm old, and I think that rock bands from the '90s are still fun and cool. So yeah, it's there's a reason you don't really hear me talk about music too much, but favorite genres again, I like stuff from the '90s, even some of the pop stuff from the '90s I enjoy. But like I'm not super into like any one band or any one like genre where I go super deep on it. I'm kind of surface level when it comes to music. It's just I've just always been a movie guy. Daniel Hammond says, with the new Jumanji movie touting that it's filming in LA, how much do you think the budget will end up being? I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a big budget movie, and the other Jumanji movies, the ones with The Rock and Jack Black, Kevin Hart, and Karen Gillan, they've performed well. So I would imagine you're probably going to be looking at a standard blockbuster budget. And then the question is, how much are they filming in LA? That's always the big question. And what kind of tax incentives are they getting from Los Angeles? There's been a very steady drumbeat to improve those tax incentives, but it was never going to be a small budget movie. I admire the fact that they're apparently doing some of the shooting locally in LA. That's great. But I think it would probably take a, let's say, $175 million movie and maybe turn it into a $225 million movie. Again, that's not me knowing what the budget is. That's just me estimating it. Maybe 125 to 150, $160 million. But I think that they can afford it if they're filming within their means. I think I saw too. Dwayne Johnson said that it was going to be the last Jumanji movie, which that makes sense. You'll have done three. I'm fine with that. Don't overdo it. Freakstomp95 says, what do you think will be the future of Hollywood? More YouTube content / podcasts or low budget movies? Have you spoken to anyone in the industry about this? Also, do you ever listen to Fat Man Beyond? I don't listen to Fat Man Beyond regularly. I don't really watch or listen to a whole lot of other stuff, podcasts, YouTube channels regularly, other than small videos, just because I'm usually very busy doing what I do. The only time I really get to listen to stuff is when I'm driving. I had a day on the road on Tuesday, yesterday. No, what day is it? Wednesday, Monday. I had a day on the road Monday. I've got another day on the road tomorrow, and I've got 2 more days on the road next week, just because tis the season to see the movies that I want to see. So I will listen to podcasts and stuff, but oftentimes I listen to audiobooks too when I travel. So I don't really get to listen to Fat Man Beyond. Kevin Smith used to record that at the Defy Media offices way back when. I think back like 10 years ago when Force Awakens came out. And I've seen clips and stuff, but I don't listen to it. I don't really talk to a lot of people that are in the industry. People that would have a whole lot of insight on that, the future of media and what's going to happen with podcasts, et cetera. I do think that, I mean, obviously YouTube specifically and podcasts are becoming more competitive with movies for eyeballs, for time, for attention. I think that there will be low budget movies that maybe are not necessarily in theaters, but that are made for streaming services. Although we seem to be kind of swinging a little bit back toward theaters, potentially, we'll see. But I don't think anybody really knows what the future of Hollywood is going to be. It's a very crucial time, and it's paired with obviously the pandemic and the strikes and stuff that were detrimental to the industry as far as keeping momentum and losing audience and the output dropping. So I think that Hollywood has to look at the current moment and adjust to it. And some of that will be altering what they're making. Some of it will be altering how much they're spending on it. And I've said it many times before, when it comes to theatrical exhibition, that industry itself, the theater owners, they also have to do a lot of work on their end to keep that experience premium, because people are paying premium prices right now for an experience in many cases that's not premium. So I think if that's not addressed, then that's going to trickle down back to the studios. But I think the future of Hollywood in the next 5 years is going to be very interesting, especially with AI and all the new technology and audience interest and what audiences can generate and what they're interested in watching. I think that the future is going to be, I think we're going to see a scaled down version of Hollywood at its peak, but I think it's important to make sure that it doesn't just disappear. And that could happen if they're not careful. Nerd Boy says top three Michael J. Fox movies. Well, I mean, Back to the Future has got to be one of them. And it's not just a normie answer. Like, I don't think you could name three other movies that Michael J. Fox was in that are better than Back to the Future. Um, I mean, Teen Wolf I enjoy because it's just a relic of its time, the '80s. The Frighteners I think is I don't love the movie, but I love what Peter Jackson was doing in that movie. Of course, you've got Back to the Future 2 and 3. I like both of those movies kind of in descending order, Back to the Future, then 2, then 3. I don't think 3 is terrible, but it's probably my least favorite of the three Back to the Future films. Um, and I always forget movies too that Michael J. Fox was in. So, I mean, Back to the Future's definitely up there. Hmm. Mars Attacks. He's in that one. That's a really interesting movie. It's a mess, but it's an entertaining movie. So yeah, Back to the Future, Mars Attacks, and yeah, I'd probably throw Back to the Future 2 in there with the acknowledgement that I'm probably forgetting something. I mean, I like Secret of My Success. There's some I haven't seen, like Doc Hollywood and I think Life with Mikey. That those are both Michael J. Fox movies. Yeah, I mean, American President. It's not really a to go to a movie fights. It's not really a Michael J. Fox movie, but if it's just movies that he was in, then American President would also easily make that top three. All right, let's see what else we have. Another one from Nerd Boy. Most memorable Jack Nicholson movie. So not necessarily best, but most memorable. Batman 89 would be the most memorable Jack Nicholson movie for me because that just blew my 6 year old mind when it came out. And I was obsessed with that movie. I'm still obsessed with that movie. I think it's a great movie. If we're talking memorable, The Departed, I remember seeing in a theater, and that was one of the times that I remember people movies get overanalyzed and dissected afterwards and memed. And so I think that the opinion of The Departed has fluctuated over the years, especially after it won Best Picture and Best Director, and oh, it's not that good. But I remember the theater experience of The Departed. It was one of the times that the audience was as involved in that film as any other audience in any other movie that I've been to. And this was a Los Angeles audience. I mean, this was a supposedly cynical, jaded audience. And just there's one scene, and I won't spoil it in case you haven't seen it in the last 19 years since it came out. But there is a scene where a character is falling off of a roof, and the way that it's done, it's a quick edit. You don't necessarily expect it, and there's like a gasp and just dead silence in the theater because nobody really saw it coming. Uh, that I just remember that experience, and Jack in that movie is so unhinged. I mean, it's like he's making up, and I think he was making up a lot of what he was doing on the spot. And so watching his performance too, just like, what is he doing? But it fits that character so well. I remember seeing that one very vividly when it came out. And then I think As Good as It Gets for me was a very memorable Jack Nicholson movie because I was 13, I think, when that came out, 13 or 14. And that was sort of the second resurgence of Jack Nicholson and, getting the Oscar um, and a lot of those movies that came out around that time just really stick in my memory because I watched them over and over again. I had As Good as It Gets on DVD. It was one of the first movies I ever had on DVD. So I watched it many, many times over. So I remember that one. And I think that is an example of a Jack Nicholson movie where it's just like, talk about a role that is perfectly tailored to the actor playing it. I mean, I can't imagine any other actor but Jack Nicholson playing that role. Let's see. Nerd Boy says, would you ever review older movies like from the 80s or 90s like Breakfast All Day does? I could. It's just, I generally will do what I want to do on the channel, but it's also kind of dictated by audience interests, and I have found that the audience in general is not particularly interested when I review older films. But if there was an audience for that, then yeah, I mean, all my movies was kind of that, and there wasn't a whole lot of audience interest in it. But if I could find a way to make it work and the people wanted to watch and it was worth my time to do it, yeah, I could see myself doing that. Shop 708 says, "Hey Dan, heard of this movie game? Game. One person says a movie, second person names an actor from that movie, then back to the first with a movie that actor was in. No repeats and two-player minimum. What do you think?" I don't know if it's that game specifically. I've played a similar game. This probably doesn't shock anybody, but the movie trivia Schmodown crew, we are actually movie nerds, and Sam Levine and Rachel Cushing Levine have a version of this game that we often play if it's a road trip or when I'm there to visit and we have some extra time. That's similar to that. So I don't know if I played that specifically, but I have played games because movie nerds are movie nerds in private and in public, including me. Forever Blue says, "How come you don't cover any Game of Thrones related shows? No review of House of the Dragon. You used to do an after show for it on Screen Junkies." Well, I don't believe I did the after show for Game of Thrones, which I think was called Watching Thrones. That was Ken and his crew. So that was all. I mean, I did not. I was just a cog in the machine at Screen Junkies. I didn't really have anything to do with the Game of Thrones stuff that was done while I was there. I think I did do one review of House of the Dragon, maybe after the first episode came out. I don't remember if it was the whole first season. Honestly, both seasons I've gotten to the end of it, and they both fallen into that gray area for me of, especially season two, of not really loving it that much and not really having much to say on that end, but I didn't think it was terrible, and so I didn't really have much to say on that end. And so it sort of was, and this probably hurts the channel over time, but a lot of times if I have something that I just don't have very strong feelings about, I won't do a video because I just don't see the value in it. I don't think that I have anything productive to offer to the conversation, and that's sort of where I've fallen, definitely with season two of House of the Dragon. And that's sort of where I fell with Rings of Power. And I think I even said in my last review, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do any more of these because it's the same thing every time. It's like, it's fine. I don't know. I just don't find that very interesting to make on a personal level. And I don't think it's very interesting stuff for you to watch as a viewer of the channel. I'd rather do something I'm more interested in. So that's largely why. Another one from Nerd Boy. Thank you. Has your taste in movies changed over time? Absolutely, it has. I think that everybody's taste in movies or art or music evolves over time. There are certain types of things that I've always enjoyed, certain types of movies, but for example, anime, which I didn't really know anything about, let's say 5 years ago, I've gotten into more, and now I go and enjoy watching the Demon Slayer movies in theaters, and I enjoyed watching Chainsaw Man in theaters, and I'm watching a few more anime shows, especially the ones that have those movie tie-ins. It kind of started as, oh, I'll watch this so I can review it, and then I got genuinely interested in it. So I've gotten interested in new things. Certainly my taste, there are times over time, certain things wear you down. So Marvel movies, for example, kind of wore me down over time, and I'm not as excited about them. And that's largely due to what's in the movies themselves. And I connect to things differently. As I've gotten older, there are certain themes in movies that hit harder for me than others. So yeah, I would say my taste in movies has definitely evolved over time, and I think that's true for most people. Nolan Lapino says, "Went through the Lord of the Rings Blu-ray extras, and the amount of effort put into them is astounding. Their budgets adjusted are about $180 million. You don't get any modern movies having money thrown at them, and the effects are worse." Well, that's what I love. I mean, the appendices on the Lord of the Rings, Blu-rays and 4K discs, I think for my money, that is the best making of any movie out there. I mean, you could maybe throw up the Hearts of Darkness, or the Apocalypse Now documentary, or some other chronicles of making a movie. But if you just want to get into the nuts and bolts and every single element, and I'll agree, there are movies that have that kind of money thrown at them now that don't make nearly as much. And I think a big reason why is that Peter Jackson did on the Lord of the Rings movies what he himself did not then do on the Hobbit movies, and maybe that was workflow, and a big part of it was, which is to use visual effects as a complementary tool to other tried and true techniques like models and miniatures, and actually just doing things for real instead of replacing those things entirely. So yes, there are a lot of digital effects in the Lord of the Rings movies, but if you watch those behind the scenes featurettes, you'll see Not only were they doing bigatures, as they called them, miniature work, and compositing that into practical shots, which are also supplemented by digital effects, but even things like the makeup, the work that went into the practical makeup, and the fact that the armor and the chain metal for the soldiers were hand done so that they looked authentic. The clothing was made so that it felt real, and it was done at scale. So you did have huge numbers of extras that were then supplemented by digital extras instead of everybody being extras. I think that it really is a great look into how to make a big budget movie that is massively dependent on visual effects, but how to give it that real feel. And I'm glad that it's documented for that reason, because I think that we've lost that. And it was one of the big, for me, detractors of the Hobbit trilogy, which is that it didn't have that same feeling. It did all feel digital and plastic and fake because they either didn't or weren't able to, or both, put all of the time and effort into doing as much practically. Even things like the forced perspective stuff, when you replace that with digital effects, I think there is a fakeness that goes that there. So yeah, those features, that behind the scenes stuff is some of the best stuff I've ever seen produced as far as the making of a movie. Gerardo A. Ariano, member for 2 months, thank you, Gerardo, says, who's getting best song this year, Sinners or K-pop Demon Hunters? Well, who knows? There could be another song that pops up that beats them both. But right now, I can't see. Well, no. The Academy does a lot of things that don't really make sense to me. What they have currently, unless something swoops in with Golden, specifically K-pop Demon Hunters, is you have a hit song that has really penetrated the marketplace. Keep your mind out of the gutter. And that people love, that I think it's a hit song. It's a good song. It's a song that people have actually heard of. It's a song that's very thematically tied into the movie and works well in context of the movie. That, to me, has all the makings of a best original song winner. And for me, if I was going to name my favorite song, like what song from a movie would I listen to right now, it would probably be that one, because I enjoy that song as well. So that to me seems an easy win because it checks off all the boxes. It's not just popular, or it's not just really good. It's everything. If you were going to have me lay down money, I'd say Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters, but the best original song category, they have a history of giving the Oscar to songs that nobody would likely sit down and ever listen to. So I don't have any faith that that's what's going to happen. And that's not to put down the music in Sinners, by the way. There's a lot of great other songs out there, but I think that Golden ticks all the boxes. Nerd Boy, another one. Thank you. How high do you think movie prices can or should go? Well, I mean, they technically could or can go limitlessly high, but I don't think they should go higher than they are right now. I think they should go lower. That was part of my advice to theaters and studios, is figure out a way to lower movie prices, because I don't think the market is tolerating the movie prices that we have right now. I think the movie prices that we currently have are driving people away actively from seeing movies in theaters, or seeing movies in theaters less often. So they can go higher, but I don't think they should go higher. And I think they need to go lower. So I cannot imagine the movies getting more expensive. If movie theaters decide to charge more for tickets than they're already charging, unless something drastically changes, then they're signing their own death certificate. You cannot increase movie ticket prices right now or in the near future. If it is a sustainability issue with the theaters, then they need to go to the studios and say, we need to figure out a different cost structure between us as far as what we split, because you need us to survive, but we cannot charge more to our customers than we're charging right now. TV Person 21 says, any insight on the state of Screen Junkies? Kind of surprised they haven't renamed the channel to just Honest Trailers. I don't really know anything about Screen Junkies other than what I hear from Spencer, who I think is pretty much the only person that's still there, like full time, of the crew that I was there with. Spencer, and then I think Kevin, the editor. So Yeah, I mean, it does make. I'm not going to lie, and this is not. This is just a reflect. It's part of why I started this channel. It does make me sad to see so much of what we built over the years kind of go away. First with movie fights, and then with Screen Junkies Universe, and then Honest Trailer commentaries, and sort of that personality that I think we spent a long time building on the channel, and that I certainly thought, I'm not going to speak for anyone else, I certainly thought that that personality was as much a part of our brand as Honest Trailers. But that's sort of what happens when you are a part of a bigger machine. There was obviously a determination made that the focus should be on Honest Trailers, and so that's what it is. I would agree to the extent of if you're just going to do Honest Trailers, it would seem like, okay, why not just rename the name Honest Trailers? But I guess Screen Junkie still does have some recognition, name recognition among certain people. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it is not for me to say, in the sense of like they are free to make the decision that they want at fandom because they own Screen Junkies, they own the brand. But it has made me sad to see a lot of what we developed over that time just kind of get, because I think that there's value to that beyond dollars and cents. I think there's a community value, and it's what I've tried to foster and build here. And this show actually reminds me of when we would do Screen Junkies Universe, and it would just be one of those. There's no news days. It's like, let's just take your questions because there's no news. And if only I had Spencer and Joe here, this would be a lot more fun for me and probably for you too. That one guy says, will we ever get a tour of your movie or physical media collection? That's funny you should ask that. I was actually thinking about that this week because I've done two, I think, yeah, I've done two Blu-ray collection videos, one right after I launched the channel in 2020 and one like I think 2 or 3 years ago. And I was thinking it's about time to update it, but also instead of like making a third one, so you'd have to watch three videos to get the full one, I was thinking about doing a whole other reboot. Like, okay, let's start over. Let's go through it A to Z once again, and we'll go from the top because there's a lot that's been added, and it would be weird to just kind of like, oh, go watch these other two videos, then watch this one video. So yeah, I've thought about doing it. I don't know how interesting it would be to people at this point, but yes, I have thought about doing it. And if you're curious, there are two other videos that are currently on the channel. They're a little out of date that you can watch right now because it's got a lot of that stuff in it. Zach Likes Movies says, finally got around to watching Anora, Wild Ride. Still think The Substance should have won Best Picture. Side question, are you a Sparkling Water fan? I mean, yeah, The Substance was my favorite movie last year, although Anora was up there as well. I didn't begrudge it its win for Best Picture, but The Substance would have been my vote for Best Picture. It is a wild ride. I tried not to know too much about it going in, and so it constantly surprised me, the shifts in tone and what it became as the story unfolded. The Substance would fit under that category as well. Am I a Sparkling Water fan? Not particularly. No. If I'm gonna drink water, I want to be able to drink water. Like for example, here I was gonna take a drink anyway. I've got a vitamin water just to keep me hydrated. If I want to drink water for hydration, then I want to be able to drink water that I can drink a lot of without getting the gas, having to burp and everything. If I want to drink something sparkling, I'll drink a soda generally. So yeah, I've even done the flavored sparkling waters and stuff. It's fine, but if I'm gonna drink water, I prefer to drink still water. I'm not European, you can tell. Stay says, what are your thoughts on film studies and its purpose in filmmaking? Is it worth going to a 4 year or should I just go to a community college? Well, that's a very complex question. I do think that there is some value to getting an education in film, a film school at a 4 year institution. Now, it also kind of depends on the program because well, there go the focus issues again. Well, what can you do at this point? Um, I do think that you have to look at the program because there are some 4 year colleges where the film program is basically 2 years. So you spend 2 years getting your prerequisites out of the way, and then you go to film school for 2 years, and that's where your focus is. And there's some colleges that offer a 4 year film program where you're doing a full course of film studies, or at least partially film studies, for 4 years. And you'll always have prerequisites. So I would say if it's a film program where you could potentially incur less debt on your own by getting the prerequisites done in community college or at a different institution, if it's a particularly expensive institution, and then get into the film program and do it for the 2 years that the film program lasts, then I think that there's some value to that. And I think that if it's a 4 year program, there's some value to that. There are skills that you can learn, and I think a lot of it is practical skills. I think the big thing that film school, the biggest thing for me that I think film school has to offer is hands-on experience. The difference between even when I went to college and now is you can get hands-on experience now without going to a place, because it used to be that film schools and then studios and production facilities had the equipment and you couldn't really get hands-on experience without accessing equipment. Well, if you don't know how to use the equipment, you got to learn. And how do you learn? You go to film school. Things are different now. The mechanics of production are different now. So you can get that experience without going to film school. And I would imagine that a lot of the filmmakers working today, some of the successful filmmakers, I don't know if Zach Kreger went to film school. He may have. I don't know if the Philippou brothers went to film school. They may have. But I can guarantee you that a lot of it was also hands-on experience. And so I don't think it's as much a prerequisite as it used to be. I think the main thing that you have to find, whether it's in film school or in community college or wherever, is a creative community. We covered this in the interview I did. If you didn't see it, I did an interview with John Michael Powell, who's an indie director. He just put out a movie called Violent Ends. And he also underscored this, is you have got to find what he calls your army, what I call your people. You've got to find your people, because that is, to me, the real key to creative fulfillment and potentially to finding your place in a career. Is you have to have people, find the people that enjoy doing what you do, collaborate with them, make stuff with them, because you never know where that's going to lead. And I mean genuine artistic connection, not sort of cynical, I'm going to get to know you because I think you might be able to get me somewhere. I mean genuine artistic connection with people, because those are the teams that are able to lift each other up and get through the industry. So I do think that film school has a function and a role to play, and I think that you can learn a lot there. I don't think it's essential, but I would just say, if it's a choice between, hey, I can put myself in $100,000 worth of debt that I'm going to spend 10 years paying off, and to pay that debt off, I'm going to have to take jobs that keep me away from doing what I want to do creatively for 10 years, versus I'm going to learn what I can and maybe do a community college that's less expensive, but I'm committed to creating, and I'm going to find people, and I'm just going to make stuff, good stuff, bad stuff, it doesn't matter. I would do the latter personally. I would not saddle myself with debt that could then, for financial reasons, keep you away from doing work that could be more creatively fulfilling. That's just my opinion, though. Take that for what it's worth. It's a good question, and I think it's a complicated question. Mercurial Funk says, Dispatch is a recent video game that's very much a TV show you play. Is that something you would be interested in or review? Also, the Walking Dead game. I feel like a lot of video games kind of feel like movies or TV shows that you play. I played one of the Walking Dead games, one of the Telltale games. The Telltale did a Back to the Future game that I thought was really good. Maybe. Gaming is so outside of my... It's not necessarily that I don't enjoy gaming. I do. I don't play regularly, but I tend to get super deep on a game and play it all the way through. I did that with Red Dead Redemption 2. I've done that with the Spider-Man games. But there are so many people that are so into gaming and have built channels and have built followings and Twitch followings, that I feel like I wouldn't really have much to offer, because I can't really offer a whole lot of insight into playing a game, other than I played it and I liked it, or I played it and I didn't like it. I don't stream on Twitch. You can't watch me playing the game. It would just be me talking about playing the game. So I just feel like that there are so many other people in that area that do it better and more completely than I do, that I've never really thought about it. But I think that gaming is storytelling. I played the Indiana Jones game earlier this year, and I know I'm kind of late, but I think it just hit PlayStation 5 earlier this year. But I played the Indiana Jones game, and I was like, that was a fun game, and honestly, that was a great Indiana Jones story. It's one of the best. I'd probably rank that fourth behind the first three movies. Ryan Schuler says, "Hey Dan, longtime viewer, former Screen Junkies Plus subscriber. Of the many movies you review each year, how many do you buy physical copies of? Wish you well." Thank you, Ryan. Not as many as I used to, only because physical media has gotten so expensive. I mean, it used to be okay. A movie comes out on disc and it costs $20, $25, and then if you wait 6 months, it'll cost maybe $15. And then if you wait maybe a year, you might find it on sale like Black Friday for like $10 or maybe $7.50. Now it's like, all right, a movie comes out, it's $35. A year later, it might be $25, and that's probably as low as it's going to go unless there is like a huge sale. And so collecting physical media has gotten so much more expensive, even as fewer, excuse me, geez, even as fewer people are collecting physical media. So it's fewer movies than I used to, or I will wait longer until I can get it at that lower price point. But generally, I'd say I also buy a lot of older movies too. It's not just newer movies, especially Criterion. I mean, the flash sales and the 50% off sales. I'll usually buy 4 or 5 movies a year ish with that. So I'd say in a given year, there are 5 to 10 movies that I'll buy on physical media. And that's not to say that that's the only ones I decide are worth buying, but it's also because so many of them are on streaming. And so if it was a borderline case where I'm like, yeah, I liked it, but in the past I might buy it because I want to be able to see it anytime I want. When I already subscribe to a streaming service that has it, that's less of an incentive for me to buy it on physical media. So I buy even less than I used to. But yeah, I will always be a physical media guy. I just, I don't know. If I love a movie, then I'll definitely get it. I'm still waiting for Sinners to drop just a little bit because I'm definitely going to get Sinners on physical media. The picture quality and the sound quality is better, by the way, on physical media. The Vikinger Bear says, thoughts on the zero hype for Avatar 3? Too soon? Um, it's funny because I remember this exact conversation happening before the last Avatar movie. When Avatar 2 was coming out, I remember people saying, "Oh, this movie's going to flop." Have you heard one person talking about Avatar 2? And then it came out and it did great. So I just think that the Avatar movies are not like a Marvel movie or another typical blockbuster where there's this like intense hype before it comes out. I think it's just they just are kind of like it's like planning a trip to Disney World or something. It's just something people are planning to do, but there's not this massive hype around it. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed hit, but I just remember this same conversation happening around Avatar 2 and it ended up being fine. So it doesn't concern me that much because they seem to have if this matches the second one, the Avatar movies seem to have kept their status as essentials. In Sheer Zero One says thoughts on the Walden Media Narnia films. I've only actually seen the first one. I know that there are a lot of people younger than me that grew up on those movies. I did not, so I've only seen Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I thought was a good movie, but I haven't seen the other ones. So we'll see with the new version. With I know that I don't think they're starting with Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, but Greta Gerwig's versions. We'll see how those do. Oswald Cobblepot says, "Hey Dan, do you have any movie-related tattoos? Just curious. I have a bunch of tattoos and several movie-themed ones. I have 2 tattoos, both of which I guess you could say are movie-related, and I got them both in my early 20s. And I'm not against getting more. I just have never really had an idea or thought of one that's like, I have to have that. I have a film reel on one leg that I got on my 21st birthday. On my other leg, I have a 540, that was our address when I was in college, 540. That house is no longer there. It was bulldozed to build apartments in Tallahassee, soulless, bland apartments. I hate it. But yeah, it's a 540, but it's done in the Back to the Future coloring. So the kind of orange, blue, Back to the Future graded coloring. So yeah, 2 tattoos, both of which are film related. But no direct movie tattoos, as in the shark from Jaws, which I've thought about getting and may someday. Dennis Sorensen says, "Hi Dan, longtime fan, first time live viewer. Any favorite Danish movies at the top of your head?" Oh man, so I'm typing in right now movies from Denmark because I don't want to name a movie that is not from Denmark. That I don't want to offend anybody, but looking at it, and hopefully this is an accurate list that I'm looking at. I have seen Another Round, which I really, really liked. And I thought that Mads Mikkelsen was great in that movie. Let's see. I haven't seen Breaking the Waves. That was one of the movies that was a breakthrough independent film when I was growing up, but that I didn't ever see. And I've heard it's really good. Dancer in the Dark, I've not seen, but I've heard it's very good. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any other that jump out at me that I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that and it was really good. I just don't want to name like a Swedish movie and you're like, that's from Sweden. That's not Danish. Yeah, I know Lars von Trier. I haven't seen a whole lot of his movies. Yeah, I would say of the most recent ones that I've seen, Another Round I thought was really really good, and I know that they were talking about again. I don't know why it's such a weird coincidence, but I was thinking about this yesterday. The fact that they announced that there's going to be a remake of Another Round, but I haven't really heard much about it. Why bother? Because it's such a good movie to begin with. So that's the first one that jumps to mind and that I really enjoyed. If you haven't seen Another Round, it's very good. Kyle Harlow says, with a lot of focus on quantity rather than quality, in the hopes of getting new streaming subscribers, studios seem to complain that streaming isn't profitable anyway. Will theaters ever come back? I mean, theaters haven't necessarily gone away. They do need to improve, but it's, it, and I've said this before. I remember, I mean, this was back in 2018, 2019, before I left Screen Junkies. We were talking about streaming services and the fact that it's like they keep pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into content, and I know that some of them are profitable now, some of them are turning a profit, but keep in mind that once a streaming service becomes profitable, either that service or the company that owns that service still has on the books hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars of debt that they then have to pay down, you would think, with the profits that they're making. So they are still saddled with debt that they incurred in order to get their streaming service to a point where it becomes profitable. That was one of the things that they've been talking about with the whole Warner Brothers split, with the studios and streaming division and the networks and TV division. There was talk that the debt that the current Warner Brothers Discovery has would be put on the networks division so that the studio and streaming division would be much more attractive as a financial asset, because you can say, hey, we don't have a whole lot of debt because we split the company and we gave that part all the debt, which would be detrimental to that company, but the other side ends up turning out great. I think that we are definitively in phase two of streaming. Phase one was the too good to be true phase, where all of the streamers were offering incredible deals and people were signing up in huge numbers because Disney or Netflix or HBO Max or whoever, Peacock, Hulu, Paramount Plus, they were all saying, pay us $5 a month and you can watch as much as you want. And people were like, that's a great deal. And they bought it, and that was unsustainable for everybody. No, that was not profitable, and they could never keep up that price point. And slowly over time, the prices began to rise. And then they started introducing advertising. And so it becomes much more like watching television. And I think that the phase two that we're in right now is the stress test, where they are now severely testing how much people will pay for these services. I saw something that said Paramount Plus, which is already not one of the most popular streaming services, is going to be raising their prices early next year in the first quarter. That's a stress test, and I don't necessarily think it's a stress test that the service is going to pass, because I don't know how much people will want to pay for Paramount Plus. They don't really seem to want to pay what they're paying right now, but some are. You're going to lose some. Is that offset by what you're increasing the subscription costs for? That's what they're finding out about right now. But I think that phase two, the end of phase two, is going to be some of these streaming services will fail the stress test. And they're going to have to consolidate, converge. You're already seeing some of that happening. And then phase three is going to be sort of the juggernaut phase where it's like, okay, now these are the actual competitors. These are the ones that are going to stick around forever. How can they compete with studios and theaters? And it's why I think it is key right now. For a long time, theaters did not have the value proposition over streaming. Streaming was easily the cheaper option. Now that streaming service prices have gone up, and it's not a deal too good to pass up anymore, I think that movie theaters can become more competitive with streaming services if they play their cards right. And that means getting the costs down. As I said, offering a premium experience that they're not currently offering, because now the streamers are more price competitive in the sense of their prices being higher than theaters are. And you could get to a point of somebody saying, like, well, why should I pay $20 a month for HBO Max when I could go see it in theaters for 15 if they can get the price down? That's the opportunity that the theaters have right now. Do I have any faith that they're going to take advantage of that? No, I do not. But we are getting into the stress test portion of streaming where the too good to be true side of it is gone. I'm so sorry I keep hitting this. I'm just going to move my hands away from my microphone. No promises. And now I think that the theaters have a chance to come in and really make a difference. Man, you guys have left so many comments. I mean, these are just the super chats I'm looking at. I still have over 30 comments, so thank you. I mean, I honestly thought this show was going to be short, but you were asking some really good questions. Elliot Paul Jonker says, hey, Dan from Sydney, Australia. Did you get a chance to see Good Boy this year? As a film student, I came away super inspired and fascinated as to how Ben Leonberg pulled it off. I did not get a chance to see it, but it is in my screener pile, and I'm going to try to prioritize it to see it before the end of the year because I've heard so many good things about it, and I want to see it not just for awards purposes, but for my own purposes, as I'm recognize my favorites as of what I've seen this year. Nick Cage, oh, it's high praise. Asks, me and my brother just organized my Blu-ray collection. I noticed that I have no movies that start with Q. What is a good movie that starts with Q? Well, the first one that jumped in was Quantum of Solace, but that is not a good movie. Let's see. As I'm sure people are going to be answering their own putting their own answers in the. I mean, The Quiet Man from John Ford is a very revered classic that many people enjoy. I don't personally own that movie. Let's see what I do own that begins with Q. I own Quantum of Solace, which I already said is not a good movie. The Queen, that's a good movie. Helen Mirren, Oscar winner. And then I own A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2. I think A Quiet Place is a very good movie, and I think that A Quiet Place Part 2 is a pretty good movie. So I'd say of the four Q movies I own, three of them are solid films. So yeah, The Queen, A Quiet Place, and A Quiet Place Part 2. That's a good place to start. And I'm sure that there are many other people that are putting their favorites in the comments as well. Let's see. Let's look at the live. I do like A Quiet Man, Quantum of Solace, Quiet Place, The Quiet American with Michael Caine and Brendan Fraser is another one. That's from James Road. Um, okay, so now we have to talk about that. Those don't count. They have the and. Alphabetically, Spongy 444, I'm going to have to disagree with you. They do count. The alphabetical rules have always said, at least every rule that I've read, that the does not count when you are alphabetizing books or movies, etc. It's not T. It starts with Q. So it's. I disagree. I think that it does count. The Quick and the Dead. That's from Max Pishney. That's a movie that I've heard a lot of good things about. Oh, look at that Quiz Show. I don't think that it has a Blu-ray. That's a Best Picture winner. So yeah. So yeah, we got some suggestions in there for Q movies. So there you go. What do you think about that? All right, Nick Cage. Thank you, Nick Cage. Freakstomp95 says, what TV shows of this year do you wish you could finish and ones you're okay with skipping? I haven't watched a lot of TV. I want to watch the new Vince Gilligan show, Pluribus. I watched The Studio. I'm glad I finished that, but I don't not finish a lot of TV shows because I don't watch a lot of TV shows because I'm so wrapped up with movies. I did take time to watch White Lotus the whole season because I kept hearing so much hype about White Lotus, and that was when I was like, yeah, I didn't need to watch that. It was okay, but it's like I was just like, why did I take time out of my schedule to watch this whole season? It wasn't that good. It was fine. So yeah, that's when I would have been retroactively okay with skipping. Mr. Brightside says, not to get too parasocial, but I'm really glad to see you seem to be in a good place currently. Charts is always the highlight of my week. Thank you, Mr. Brightside. I appreciate that. That is, you know, if you watch the channel, I do tend to sort of select and choose how much of my life I share with folks and what I choose to sort of keep private. And obviously, last year there were some things that I felt like I needed to talk about, and I tried not to let that bleed too much into the channel. But I am aware that I'll say that I've gotten other comments similar from people that watch the channel, and honestly from people in my own life that maybe the last 3 to 6 months have been a little different, and they felt that way to me as well. You know, it's a bit of a long road. So thank you very much, and I will say that I have been in a pretty good place the last several months. So that's much appreciated. Thank you very much. Couchin says, how elaborate is your home sound system for films? Not really that elaborate. I have a sound bar. I mean, it's an okay sound bar. It's not like top of the line, but it does well for me. I don't have like a big surround system. I actually don't like to really crank movies up when I watch them. I like to watch them a little loud, but not like overwhelmingly loud. So the soundbar that I have is perfect for my needs. Jordan Collins 444 says, we recently covered Annie Hall on the Guilty or Great podcast. What do you feel will be the legacy of Woody Allen? Boy, that is a whoo. Take a drink of water for that one. That's an interesting question. I think that cinematically, he will leave behind. I mean, I think that he's sort of victim to the Steven Spielberg thing that we were talking about earlier, but maybe even more so, where he made, in the span of about 10 years, 5 or 6 of the great comedies of that era. And then he hasn't really made anything to that level. I mean, it seems like he makes like one really notable good film every 2 to 4 years now. So I think that cinematically he will be remembered for mainly his work in the 70s and 80s. And it will always be tempered by everything that happened off screen. And that's just going to be part of it. I think that there are a lot of stars, actors, and directors that have complicated legacies. So I would say that he will have the legacy as one of the great comedic filmmakers of the 70s and 80s, and also somebody who had a lot of other stuff going on that was called out by people and people that were close to him, and it was always hanging in the air. And I think that is going to be part of his legacy. But I think cinematically, it won't necessarily be like an all-time great director. It will be a great for his time. That's my hunch. Lyrics of Best Song says, I really love your channel. Sorry if someone asked you, or if you don't want to share, but what happened between you and Mara? You seem great together. I appreciate the question. Thank you very much. That specifically is something sort of we were talking about earlier, that there are certain things that I choose to share, and there are certain things that I choose to keep private. That is something specifically that I choose to keep private. So thank you for the question, and I appreciate it. But that is something that is not public, and that I don't really would prefer not to say publicly. Not just because I just think that that's something that nobody needs to know, and you know, it's something that we went through together and that we worked out together, and we're not on bad terms. And it's just, you know, that's just something that I choose to keep not public. But thank you for your question. Connor Blanchard says, hi, Dan, big fan from Canada. Thoughts on the Dexter-verse of shows? Binging it first in 2025. It changed my assumptions of the original 2013 ending. I've only seen, and I haven't even seen all of Dexter. I've heard that the Dexter-verse has gotten quite, has seen some substantial improvement in the last, with this last series. So I kind of jumped off the train because I'd heard that it became a train wreck. But now I feel like, okay, well, maybe do I need to see what's going on? Because I hear that they have against all odds, somehow been able to pull out of the nosedive that they were in. So maybe it's something that I need to revisit. Elliot Paul Jonker says, also, I showed my non-horror girlfriend The Descent without mentioning anything about the crawlers. GD, I don't really feel like I screwed up as a boyfriend beyond that. You know, I'm it's you said girlfriend and not ex-girlfriend. So obviously, it was something you were able to work out. But I can say, especially as somebody who, prior to let's say 10 years ago, was not super into horror. Like I knew about The Descent, but let's say I didn't. If you had shown me as a non-horror person, if you'd put me in front of The Descent and not said anything about what was going to happen and just sprung that on me, we would have had problems. And I understand. Like I'm all about the hey, let people discover movies for themselves. If there's something that's like let things be a surprise. But I do think there's a limit to that, and I think you reached the limit on that. So I'm glad that your relationship survived that. That's what I'll say. And listen, as a movie buff, I'm in awe. I admire it. That I mean, that's the way to do it if you want to get someone's actual reaction. But that would have been tough for me to bear. So I'm glad that you were able to smooth that out. Pierre E. Judy says, "Love your reviews and box office analysis. What happened to your trademark double chest tap at the end of the videos? Recently noticed they were missing." Oh, man, we're hitting all the big ones today. I think I may have mentioned this before. I don't know if I did, but that was something kind of personal to me and Mara. And so when everything kind of happened that happened last year, that just was something that was a consequence of that change, and it just was something that kind of took on a new context for me. I decided to stop doing it. So many people have asked that. I don't know if I've said that personally, but yeah, I mean, it's just, it's sort of a personal thing. Wow, we're going in depth today. Christopher Brickner says, "You ranked the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. I thought you would have ranked the final of the big three horror series with Halloween this year." Yeah, you know what, Christopher? I thought about it, but I've done videos about Halloween. I did one about why I love the original series, and there didn't seem to be a whole lot of audience interest in Halloween here on the channel. So I didn't do it, but I think it's very likely that I'll do it at some point. It's also tough because it's one of those franchises that has like one movie that it's like if I'm ranking them, you know, counting up from whatever to one, it's like there's no suspense about what number one's going to be. Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, I think there's suspense about like, oh, what's the number one movie going to be? Halloween, it's like, yeah, no, I know what the number one movie is going to be. At least for me, it wouldn't even be a contest. So it was also sort of like, well, is it that interesting if you know what number one is? Metal Hendrix became a YouTube member. Thank you, Metal Hendrix. Much appreciated. Christopher Brickner says, "Good news. You don't really need to update this weekend's box office videos as Predator Badlands only went up about 16K. Yes, I noticed that yesterday. I'd had to do the estimates this year because I went to go see The Running Man, and I was terrified that Disney would have somehow overestimated Predator to the point where it didn't have the biggest debut in franchise history, and then the whole title and everything of charts would have been wrong. So I was very gratified to see that they did not, and they actually got it pretty bang on. It came in just a little above $40 million, so that was good to see. Austin Hurst says, "With the oversaturation of media these days, I find that I can never decide on something to watch. How do you decide on what's worth your time to watch?" Well, a lot of times for me, especially this time of year, for example, there's not much decision making because I currently have about 35, 40 movies that are on my list of, hey, you should probably watch this before the end of the year for awards consideration and also for like best of stuff because they put everything out at the end of the year. So for me right now, there's not much decision making. It's either whatever I have to watch for the channel right now or a movie that's for awards consideration. But there are some things. I've been watching Welcome to Derry on HBO Max. I've been watching The Chair Company on HBO Max because I'm a big I Think You Should Leave fan and I'm a big Tim Robinson fan, and I've enjoyed The Chair Company so far. So there are a few shows that I will sit down and watch of my own accord. But right now it is very much award stuff and channel stuff. In slower times, it really is just kind of like mood dependent. Or, for example, with Severance last year in the spring, I just finally had time. I think it was right after the Oscars when things kind of slowed down. I finally had time to do it after hearing so much about it. So a lot of times it's also, hey, I've wanted to watch this forever and I haven't had time. So when I do have time, it's like catching up on the backlog. So I'm actually not on the cutting edge of a lot of stuff. I have to hear about it first and then sort of catch up to it later. I'm trying to get a little bit better, but yeah. It's either I don't have much of a choice or I'm trying to go back and watch stuff that people have been talking about. Let's see. Oh, that's from Austin. We answered that one. Luis or Louis Purvis says, "Hey Dan, have loved your content on your Blu-ray collection. Is it what inspired? It's what inspired me to start my collection. Any plans for an update video?" Yeah, we mentioned that. I think closer to the top. I'm thinking about doing that and kind of starting back at one and going through the whole collection again. So stay tuned because I very well may do that here on the channel. Robbie Harris says, "What is your dream movie remake? Your nightmare?" Well, I mean, that would be my nightmare. That or Back to the Future or any movie that has no reason to be remade. None. You cannot do anything to improve on the original. You would only degrade yourselves by trying to remake it. My dream movie remake, I said, this is weird. It's like we must be on some kind of a vibey wave because I was thinking about this, and I've said this many times before, but one of the things I've been listening to while I've been driving lately has been The Shining, the audiobook for The Shining. And I still don't think that the great version of The Shining has been made yet. I think that there is an incredible adaptation out there still that hasn't been made yet. And it wouldn't necessarily be a movie remake. It would be a limited series remake. And I know that ABC did their 3-episode series, and it gets a lot right with the adaptation, but it's still not quite there. It's a little cheesy. You can tell that there are some budgetary limitations. I still think the great version of The Shining is still out there, and somebody can make it. Mike Flanagan? I don't know. I know he did Doctor Sleep, but I mean, it's he could do it. Firo Hero says, "Which director who's never won an Oscar do you most want to win one?" Well, let's see. Nolan's won. Scorsese's won. Spielberg obviously is one. Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm sure there are some great directors out there that I love that haven't won, that are still working. But who's the one that I would love to see? I mean, ideally, I'm an Edgar Wright fan. I would love for him I would love to see him make his Oscar movie. I'm not saying he's made a movie that he should win the Oscar for. I think he's got it in him. But that would be great to see that journey to start from Spaced and Shaun of the Dead and work your way all the way up to winning an Oscar. So that would be a lot of fun. There's certain anti-establishment filmmakers that I'm like, I don't necessarily think that they even want to win an Academy Award or should be kind of put in that position or would be good at making films that would win Oscars. But yeah, I think Edgar Wright would be a lot of fun to see, and we'll see with P.T. Anderson this year. I mean, this looks like it could be his year with One Battle After Another, maybe. So that would be great. This year, I think I would definitely be, unless there is a movie that comes out that just blows me away. P.T. Anderson, I would love to see win the Oscar this year. Christopher Brickner says it's funny to watch Peter Jackson's films Bad Taste, Meet the Feebles, and Brain Dead, and then remember that this is the guy who made Lord of the Rings. That's the thing about filmmaking talent. You can do it at any budget point. And I think that if you watch some of those lower budget Peter Jackson movies, even though he may not have had all the resources of Lord of the Rings, the talent, the skill is there. And that's why I love when you recruit a director who maybe has never worked at a budget that big, but then hand the film over to them and their talent. So not the case of like, oh, we're going to get a hot name who's just done a big indie and we're going to throw him into the studio system and he's not really, or she's not really going to have a whole lot of say over what we're doing, but we want the buzz attached to it. But literally an executive that says, I see something in you as a filmmaker and I'm putting my trust in you because you seem passionate about this material to execute it. That's what I think you had with Peter Jackson, and I respect the executives at New Line who recognize that. Domus says, do you know which non-English speaking as a first language countries watch your channel the most? This is crazy. I was just talking to my YouTube guy today, and we were doing a bit of a channel update, and it is mostly the US, obviously. UK's up there. Australia is up there. I think if we're talking about not as a first language, I think, and this at this point is like 2 to 4% of the audience. It's not many. I mean, Canada is a big one. I don't know the official position of English in Canada. I think it's like they have a few first languages, but Canada is a big one. India, there's a like a 2% base in India, and then I think Brazil has a little chunk in there. I think Mexico's in there as well, but it's not a big chunk. It is mostly U.S., UK, Australia. Canada's got a pretty good chunk. So if you count Canada, then that would be number one. Let's see. Christopher Brickner, thank you again, says, unlike Bruno, Golden will get an Oscar song push. Absolutely. We don't talk about Bruno. They didn't know what they had with that. They went with the easy Lin-Manuel Miranda kind of heartfelt song, and it was too late for them to course correct. I think if they had actually pushed for We Don't Talk About Bruno to win an Oscar, it would have stood a good chance, but they didn't even know what they had. They weren't campaigning for it. Netflix is absolutely campaigning Golden for Best Original Song. Tiago Sampaio says, Oi from Brazil. What is going on today? Everybody's predicting everybody's questions. Everybody knows what's going on because we were just talking about Brazil. Taking into account, and this question came in like half an hour ago, 40 minutes ago. So there's no way that Tiago knew what we were going to talk about. Oi from Brazil, taking into account the totals of screens, exhibitions, and varying ticket prices, what's the max a 90-minute movie could earn on domestic opening weekend, aka the theoretical, hypothetical 3 days ceiling today? Uh, I mean that's I don't know. There are so many variables there. Avengers Endgame did what, like I think $257 million, and that was a 3-hour movie. If you're talking about, I know people say like, well, then a movie that showed that was half as long could make twice as much, but also Avengers Endgame was literally playing every 10 minutes. So I think that in today's world, I think that probably 250, $300 million would probably be the max that any movie could make, regardless of time, length, etc. Because there is a limit to the ceiling of people going to see a movie. There are only a certain number of people that are going to go see a movie in a theater on opening weekend. But yeah, I'd say 250, $300 million, unless it was just the most insane movie ever. But like Avengers Endgame and Star Wars: The Force Awakens are the two that I would think are like, that is going to max out every possible group or demographic that would want to go see a movie on opening weekend, would be those two movies. I cannot imagine casting a wider net than that. So that's about where I'd put the benchmark. Let's say $300 million. And that's with an Avengers Endgame level type of event, which you get like once in a generation. Benjamin Burrow says, longtime fan here. I'm sure we wouldn't get a review, but I would be more curious to hear about your thoughts on Oscar 1991, a 90-minute comedy with Sylvester Stallone, Marissa Tomei, and Tim Curry. I have not seen it. I've heard that it was unjustly maligned when it came out. JTE, who is our resident Sylvester Stallone expert back at Screen Junkies, was often referencing Oscar. So I have not seen it. I was kind of kept away from what I remember the reception being, but I've heard that it's underrated. So that's what I know about it. Domus says, do you have a hidden gem movie to recommend that you're always surprised most people you suggest it to haven't seen? That's the thing, is like one that I would be surprised that most people haven't seen. I guess it would usually be a movie that seemed sort of omnipresent when I was younger. Like it was a movie that everybody had seen when I was in school, but that now I'm like, oh, wait, you don't know that movie? And people do that. By the way, that happens with me too. There are movies that I haven't seen that people younger than me say like, what do you mean you haven't seen? For example, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I didn't see until a few years ago because they grew up with it. So I think it'd have to be something like maybe from the 80s or 90s that I felt like everyone had seen and that now is a little less widely seen. So it wouldn't necessarily be a hidden gem, but more like what I would consider to be sort of a forgotten gem or a forgotten classic, but still kind of. I mean, like a movie like Batman '89, when somebody's like, talking, oh, I've never seen that one. It's like, what do you mean? Everybody saw that one. It was everywhere. It was shaved into people's heads. How could you not have seen that one? That I think that might qualify because there are a lot of hidden gems. Like, I'll always recommend Sidney Lumet's Before the Devil Knows You're Dead as a hidden gem that not a lot of people have seen. But it doesn't surprise me that not a lot of people saw it because it was a very small movie. It didn't make much. It's just one that I want people to see. I think for me to be surprised that somebody hasn't seen it, it would have to be something that I think everybody else had seen. Or even like kids movies. Like a lot of people say, like, oh, I've never seen. I think I ran into somebody the other day that said they'd never seen the original Lion King, like the 1994 one, which was just alien to me because like they put that on at school when it was raining outside. They put the Lion King on. Like everybody's seen the Lion King, but that's something you have to keep in mind as generations go on. Is these omnipresent movies? They're not. Some of them are, but most of them are not always omnipresent. Things come in and replace them. Clay, very generous. Thank you, Clay. Hey, Dan, you said in the past that you would never compare yourself to Roger Ebert. I get it. He's the GOAT, but the baton must be passed on. For a lot of us, you're our Ebert now, and I believe even he would approve. Keep it up. Well, thank you, Clay. I've always said um, any that's the comparison for me that is both um, the most flattering because I considered Roger Ebert to be the best film critic of all time, but also it really kicks in my already existing imposter syndrome. It kicks into overdrive, and I'm like, no, 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 because I legitimately believe that as much as I love reviewing films, like it's incomprehensible to me. I can't comprehend how anybody could watch me and say that I'm on that level. I can't I can't process that. It's something I'm working on in therapy. Don't worry, it's not a you problem; it's a me problem. But I find that to be both incredibly flattering and personally to me absolutely unbelievable. Like I cannot believe that. But but when people do say that, I meet that with it's just incredibly, I can't accept it because I can't. I don't know. I don't have the capacity to believe that I'm at that level. I know I'm not at his level, but I very much appreciate that. And honestly, knowing how influential he was for me and my education in film and getting into movies and finding movies that I love and learning more about new movies that I love and seeing them in new ways, for me to hear that I acted in any capacity in that way is really why I love to do what I do. Um, so I appreciate that comparison. I don't think I'll ever be able to actually accept it on a personal level, and I think maybe I shouldn't. It's probably healthy that I do reject it a little bit, but I appreciate that. Thank you. And that's one of my regrets is that I always, and I was never in a capacity where I could, but especially because of his illness and the fact that I think he was gone way too soon. I always wanted to have the opportunity to meet Roger Ebert and and this is before I ever was not even in a I wasn't doing what I was doing then. I mean, just growing up and studying film, I always wanted to meet Roger Ebert and just be able to talk to him for a few minutes because he was my guy when it comes to criticism. Bone Crusher 0806 says, planes, trains, and automobiles. Hey, are you happy that? See, I'm not so old. I deciphered those emojis immediately. Planes, trains, and automobiles and the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special are common watches in my household this time of year. What are some of your favorite Thanksgiving films? So, to me, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the essential Thanksgiving movie. There aren't really a lot of Thanksgiving films that I think really fit the role. Like there's movies like Home for the Holidays, which is set at Thanksgiving, but I think that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a essential Thanksgiving film. And then I am a it really annoys me now that Christmas decorations go out and I went into Home Depot on like September 25th to get something for the house and there was Christmas trees already in my face and I'm like, what's going on here? So it was doubly annoying because I kind of have a no Christmas before Thanksgiving policy. Not for everybody else, but mainly for me. I'm not going to listen to the music before Thanksgiving, but once Thanksgiving hits, I'm all in. So I don't mind a Home Alone, for example, on Christmas because that's a good movie to put you in the Christmas spirit. So I don't mind one of the more traditional movies on Thanksgiving. I'm all for it, just not before. Mike Larson says, can you please share thoughts on Wings 1927? If you haven't seen it, this is your nudge to watch it free here on YouTube. First Oscar winner. I have not seen it. I have seen the NBC sitcom Wings, starring Stephen Weber and Tim Daly. And oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Monk, Tony Shalhoub, and other people that I could probably name. but I've not seen the first Best Picture winner. I actually didn't know that it was free on YouTube. From what I'd read, it was hard to find. So good to know. Thank you for the heads up. Bone Crusher 0806, once again, thank you, says, is it a deal breaker if a movie you love has a bad physical release? I want to own Paul Thomas Anderson, but I've heard its home media version isn't great. Or I want to own PTA. Oh, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Sorry. See that one? I had easier time with the emojis than I did with that. I've got Planes, Trains, and Automobiles on Blu-ray. I think it's a decent release. I'm not. I found that I have a much lower threshold. I'm a physical media enthusiast, but I found that I have a much lower threshold than people who are really into the sprockets and the gears when it comes to home physical media releases, because I've had discs that I own, and then I'll read a review of it, or I'll see a comment thread somewhere, and it'll talk about what a piece of garbage the physical release of this movie is. And I'll be like, oh, I have that. I didn't think it looked that bad. Maybe it's because I grew up in a time of VHS, which was cropped 4:3 standard definition. But you've got to do something pretty bad for me to look at a home release and say, oh, that's garbage. There are very few that I can look at and say, unless it's like a bad film transfer, or like the early DVD releases where it wasn't really letterboxed, it was letterboxed inside a 4:3 frame, which you don't see anymore because they don't do DVDs and Blu-rays like that anymore. Um, I think that, especially because Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a movie that you can get on physical media affordably. It's on sale constantly at Best Buy. I'd say invest the $7 to $10 and get it, because maybe the grain and the HDR and the sprocketless scanning or whatever isn't up to the highest criterion standards. But I don't personally see anything wrong with the release that I have, and it's got some special features and stuff on it. I say go for it. You can get it affordably. I say go for it. Charles Kim says, hi Dan, Jennifer Lawrence recently shared that she will be less open with political views. I also read that Paramount has an internal blacklist with some political actors on it, like Mark Ruffalo. What are your thoughts? I think I got this question, or a version of this question, on last week's show. And thank you very much for the super chat. Last week, and I'll sort of shortly reiterate, I said that I don't. I think that one of the most difficult things about being an actor in the public eye is that when it comes to politics, you are going to be on somebody's bad side no matter what you do. So if you don't speak up or speak out about certain things, one way or the other, then people will say that you are a coward and that you are complicit in your silence. But the second that you do speak up, one way or the other, then probably half of the people that you are trying to court as potential ticket buyers or as fans will get angry for what you said. So if you say nothing, you're in trouble. If you say something, you're in trouble, and there's no real way out of it. And that's why I think that it really should be up to every actor to decide what they feel comfortable speaking about publicly when it comes to politics. And I even saw some takes around this Jennifer Lawrence thing where they were saying like, "Oh, what a coward," etc. And it's like I'm not necessarily saying I would 100% agree with it, but I understand what I think she was saying, which is that she didn't see the service because it didn't seem to do a whole lot of good, and it made things difficult for her. It just invited a lot of negativity and many times genuine harassment into people's lives. I think that is something that everyone should. I think that everyone with a public profile should be able to make up their own minds about what they want to be public about and what they want to speak about and what they don't. Mark Ruffalo is an actor who has been and is always very vocal about his political opinions and his opinions on the environment and everything else. And this idea, there's always, I saw this report that Paramount is keeping an internal blacklist with political actors on it, like, that they said that they won't work with. That's stupid, honestly. I don't think that it's sort of like the online thing where it seems like when there's a scandal online, then people assume that everybody knows about it and that every movie ticket buyer will be thinking about this thing that's been talked about online, when I don't necessarily think that every single moviegoer even knows what an actor's opinions are politically, one way or the other. I think that a good number of moviegoers don't know. unless you are one of the absolute most upfront people in the world about it. And Ruffalo is, but at the same time, how many people are thinking about that when they're thinking about buying a ticket to see a Hulk movie with Mark Ruffalo in it? I'm not really sure. I don't like the idea of anybody running a blacklist and putting people whose political opinions agree or disagree with what you want to do on it, one way or the other. So I think that that's dumb, but also Paramount, I think, is moving in a very interesting direction right now. So yeah, I think it's very difficult, and as I said last week, I even often debate about what I want to talk about and what I don't want to talk about, not because it's because it's like, well, if you don't say anything you agree with this thing that's happening, that's not necessarily it, but like, you do have to weigh, there is a consequence and a price to what you speak about, and also people that don't even want to hear anything about the real world, especially on a channel that's about movies and entertainment, that like, this is my escape, I don't want to hear you talk about it, and that's equal to the people saying that they do. So I have to wrestle in a very small version of what an actor like Jennifer Lawrence has to deal with. I also have to think about those things. So yeah, I just think we should be putting a lot less pressure on celebrities to talk about politics. And if you don't like the way that things are going politically, maybe put a little bit more focus on how you can change the system and put pressure on the system in order to affect political change. I don't think we should be putting all that pressure on our actors to say what they think. I don't think that that's a particularly effective form of political activism. I think that there are more effective ways to go with that. My opinion. That's just my 2 cents. Domi says, if you could go into filmmaking like Stuckman did as a writer director, do you have an idea of what story you'd like to tell, or at least a genre in mind? I don't really. I feel like, honestly, if I had a really good idea for a movie, I'd give it a go. Because I have written in the past. The physical act of writing is actually very difficult for me to sit down and actually write, but I have enjoyed writing after the fact. I've enjoyed the product of writing in the past, but I've never really had an idea that I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'd love to do this kind of movie. If I was going to make a movie, I would love to make a comedy. I just feel like there are a lot of great movies and a lot of great genres, but I don't think that there are as many great comedies out there. So if I felt like I had a legitimately funny idea, and honestly I'd want to do it with somebody else, I don't think I'd have enough confidence in myself as a comedic writer to say, oh, this script is funny. But comedy would be what I want to make if I was going to make my own movie. Fabrice Soonkind, I think that's right. Hey Dan, big fan watching from Belgium. What do you think about so many people already complaining about Cameron's Avatar 3 length at over 3 hours? I mean, that's as long as Titanic was, and that was the most popular movie of all time. So I think that if the movie warrants a 3 hour and 15-minute length, then there won't be anything to complain about. But if it's bloated and it didn't need to be 3 hours and 15 minutes, then people are going to complain. I generally am not really on board with complaints about films before anybody has seen them. Again, Titanic, 3 hours and 15 minutes. I think that movie was appropriate for that length. And if James Cameron thinks that he has crafted a story that takes 3 hours and 15 minutes to tell, well, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt until I see otherwise. Julius Wyatt says, favorite Bond movie and song. Love the channel. Man, favorite Bond movie on any given day is tough. It's between Goldfinger and Casino Royale, the Daniel Craig one, not the David Niven one. Uh, One or the other. It's what kind of mood am I in? Am I in for, like, do I want more of the classic Bond feel, the Connery feel, or do I want more of the modern take on James Bond? But those are the two that I weigh back and forth. Favorite Bond movie and favorite Bond song. I actually think my favorite Bond song, A View to a Kill, is up there. I think A View to a Kill is a great Bond song. And then the Chris Cornell song from Casino Royale, I think it's You Know My Name. That's also a great Bond song. So those are the first two that I think of. Potter Potty 01, hey Alan, says, hey Dan, how are you? Just came back from an anniversary screening of Dogma, finally reached the UK. Favorite Kevin Smith film? And I know you must have met him back in the Screen Junkies days. Any fun stories? Yeah, I mean, Kevin Smith is always that saying, don't meet your heroes. I'm sure that that is true in many instances, but Kevin Smith was the exception to that rule because I met him a few times. He came in, if you'll remember, he did movie fights a few times. As I mentioned, he used to film Batman or Fat Man Beyond in the Screen Junkies news studio, the first one that we had, not the second one that we had, for a while. So I would see him every once in a while, and he was incredibly nice. My favorite Kevin Smith film is probably. I mean, I've always respected Red State just because I felt like he really was flexing his muscle in a different way there. I mean, Dogma might be my favorite of his. I still think about a lot of lines from Dogma, and I think that that was a great for him. For me, I think that that was a great merging of his sensibilities as far as like the Jane Silent Bob type humor and the weed and etc. The rubber poop monsters he often will say, but also like getting into his own faith and the difficulties with that and getting into some more complicated questions. So Dogma might be it. That might be my favorite Kevin Smith movie. I mean, there's a lot of really fun stories. The one that always just kind of made me, it felt like an out of body experience. It was after he'd come in and done movie fights two or three times, and it shocked me first of all the second time that he came in and that he even remembered who I was. But he always remembered my name, said hello, which again mind blowing. And then I remember it was kind of late in the day. I went in there in the lobby and he was sitting outside the studio on his phone. It was dark. I mean, there was like nobody there, and he just finished a show, and it was before Force Awakens came out, right before I think, but after there had been critic screenings. So I had seen it, but I don't think everybody had seen it before. And I walked in and he looked up and he goes, "Hey man." And I was like, "Me?" He's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And, "Yeah, good to see you, blah blah blah." And he's like, "Hey, so have you seen The Wars?" And he's talking about Star Wars, and I was like, "Yeah," and he'd seen it, and then we just started talking about Force Awakens and what we liked and stuff, and it's just like for a kid who grew up who, and I've said this I think many times before, like one of my introductions to indie cinema was like one of my mom's younger coworkers like slipping me a VHS of Clerks and saying like you need to watch this movie, and seeing it, and it was not unlike it was I'd never seen a movie like that before because I was probably 13, 14 years old. And to go from that and then watching all of his movies and being a big fan in college to hear he wants to know what I thought about Star Wars, which is something I'd heard him talk about so many times, was one of those sort of surreal moments. And that, and there was a movie fight where JTE used to give us the countdown. He'd say like 1 minute because we do it live. And at one point he says 30 seconds, and Kevin Smith goes 30 seconds, no more dick. 30 seconds, no more dick, which is from Dick Tracy. They're going to blow him up, and that's Itchy. The character Itchy says that, and I go, huh. And he looks at me and he goes, "You know what that's from?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What's it from?" And I was like, "Dick Tracy." He's like, "Dude," and it's just like crazy. Yeah, Kevin Smith, no complaints. Super nice guy. Man, this is our longest live show ever, and honestly, I thought it was going to be my shortest one. We have like 20 left, so I mean, I don't want to end the party, but I will say, if you would go ahead and if you're in the middle of asking something, send it now. But I am going to have to cap it off pretty soon, so get those last minute questions in now. Because we're already at an hour and a half. I'm shocked. I honestly thought this was going to be like a 45-minute show. We might get like 10 people asking questions, and then I'd go through the live comments. And I feel so bad. I haven't even had a chance to get into the live comments because so many people have been sending in super chats. So I apologize. I really did think I was going to get into those, but so many people have sent in questions. But let's cap off, unless you're actively typing a question right now. Let's cap off of what we've got because I've still got 19 to go. And you've got things to do, and I've got things to do. Your time is more important than mine, but I'm the one that asked you to ask questions, but I legitimately did not think this many people would have questions for me. Chris Wynn says, "I'm looking to pitch slash be the host of a movie review show for my local news station where I work, but I get in my head speaking on camera alone. Are there any tips?" Sure. Yeah. Practice, first of all. Practice is huge. I get in my head all the time. And it was even worse when I started on camera. I was constantly in my head because I was thinking about, well, what am I going to say next? Well, what if the thing? What's on my paper? What's in my notes? Am I going to get that word right? What are people thinking? Am I coming? You just get so wrapped up in what you don't want to mess up, you don't want to screw up, you want to say everything perfectly. I don't know if that's the same with you, but practice was literally the only way that helped me get the only thing that helped me get better. It helped that I sort of cut my teeth as a public personality on movie fights because it was very extemporaneous, and it forced me to organize my thoughts on the fly and put together construct arguments on the fly. And I had to be very structured. I have a background in debate in high school, so that helped me a little bit. But practice is always part of it. Record yourself. So record, like do a report like you want to do. Record yourself, and this is always difficult. I understand, especially if you're in your head. It was tough for me, but it helped me. Watch it back. Watch back what you did. Maybe not right away, like the next day. Watch it back and make notes on where you can improve. Oh, I did that thing that I don't. I still do it. I watch these live shows and I pick apart. I use filler words too much, or I repeat this phrase too much, and I try to internalize that, and then fold that into what I do the next time. And then I'll watch back a little bit more and say like, okay, yeah, I've gotten better at that, but I need to improve on this. So for me, even it's a constant improvement and watching back and getting better. So practice a lot, record yourself, go back and watch the recordings, make mental notes and even physical notes if it helps you to what you can do to improve and things that bother you about it, and practice those things until it becomes second nature, because the more you practice it and the more that you internalize those notes and you get better, then you don't have to think about those things anymore, and you get out of your own head because it's just like second nature at that point. Charts for me right now, the hardest part for me is prepping at this point because I've done the show so many times. Like I think we're approaching 300 episodes just on this channel, that I don't really think about hosting it necessarily because I've done it so many times. I can just focus on the numbers and how I'm going to structure everything. I don't have to think about what I'm going to say or how I'm going to say it because it just kind of happens. So yeah, practice, repetition, tape yourself, watch it back. Honestly, get feedback from other people. If you have somebody that you trust, say, hey, I want to do this thing for the newscast. Will you watch this and let me know what you think? If you were watching this at home, what would you think about this? And yeah, yeah. And I would also say, I don't know if there's a time factor as far as when if it's a job that's open now or if it's a job that is kind of an ongoing thing. But I would say don't submit for it until you are fairly comfortable with it, because that is the you that they're going to see. So if it's not quite as polished as you want it to be, then that may stick in their head. If you don't get it this time, they may say like, "Oh no, I saw that tape last year, and I'm not really sure." Like make sure that first bite at the apple that you get is the best bite that you could possibly have, because if it's a good tape, and even if you don't get it this time, they might remember you and say, "Hey, you remember that? Who was that person? Who was Chris? Was that Chris? Is he still around?" You never know when something can come back, even if it's an opportunity that you didn't get. They could come back and say, you impressed us and we'd like to see you again. So I hope that's helpful. Those would be my tips, and that certainly would help me. The Vikinger Bear says, favorite James Cameron film? For me, it's Titanic. Terminator 2, I think. Or Aliens. The thing is, he's made so many. Terminator 2. But Titanic and Aliens are 1A and 1B, or 1B and 1A. Those for me are the three, but those would be the first ones that jump out to me. Victor Vargas says, have you thought about doing quick reviews here on the stream of movies you don't want to make a main review of? I thought about it. I just, again, it's like, I don't know if that offers any value for people, because if it's a quick review, then it's probably a movie that I don't have much to say about. And if it's a movie I don't have much to say about, then I don't really know if it's of interest. Like for me, I want to be able to talk to, if I can't talk about a movie for 6 to 8 minutes, then that to me says, oh, well, then I don't have a whole lot to offer. And so it's, I get in my own head about a lot of things. Turkey Pope became a YouTube member. Thank you, Turkey Pope. And gobble gobble to you. Fluffy Pro says, you've been getting some tough questions, so here's a really tough one. What movie without a shark would be better with a shark attack? Okay, so a movie that does not have a shark attack in it, that in the middle of the movie just says a Deep Blue Sea style shark attack. That's what I'm taking from this question. I do think that there should be some water involved. I mean, Waterworld if it was Kevin Costner versus the Smokers versus giant shark, and like a giant shark comes up and like eats one of the jet skis. I mean, that could have been that could be the conflict that was missing the entire time. So I'd say Waterworld maybe, or I mean, if you're just going to throw a shark attack into a random movie just to see what it was like My Dinner with Andre and Bruce, like they're having dinner and then a shark attacks. Surreal, yes, but potentially interesting. Yeah, yeah. I think Waterworld with a shark attack, A plus. Black Bag says, Dan, I've been a fan for 11 years now, and it's a blessing to see you soar even to this day. Thank you very much. I adore your work and wish you the best. Thank you, man. Thank you, Black Bag. We're getting to the point now where people are like, I've been a fan of yours for like a decade plus, or it's now common that somebody says, hey, I've watched you since I was a kid, which makes me feel 85% great and 15% ancient. But thank you. It's again, it's sort of like the Roger Ebert thing. It's mind-boggling to me that anybody would even want to watch me for 10 plus years. So thank you very much. Andrew Brown says, have you seen Mobile Suit Gundam, one of the best sci-fi stories ever? I've not, but that's one of the ones that often gets recommended to me is Mobile Suit Gundam. Sean says, rom-coms are a guilty pleasure of mine. What is your favorite? Mine would be About Time. So it's like, I think rom-coms kind of fall into two categories. There's like the great movies that are romantic comedies, and then there are the ones that kind of fit the mold of like your typical rom-com, like your, Matthew McConaughey mid to late 2000s offering. When Harry Met Sally would probably be my favorite rom-com. I'm trying to think if there's one that would be more, that I like more. Yeah, probably When Harry Met Sally. But I also like a cheesy rom-com, like a really kind of, I like a good Hugh Grant rom-com because I think he's a great romantic comedy star. So I like your Notting Hills or your what's the one with Sandra Bullock in New York? I'll think of it probably once I'm off the air. But yeah, I would say like my favorite is like a Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan, like When Harry Met Sally. A good Hugh Grant rom com I'm a fan of because I think that he is like a great romantic comedy star. Dutch Road Movie sent in a super chat. There's no text, but I appreciate you sending in the super chat. Thank you very much. Let's see. The Charlie Reels says, do you feel any guilt for trashing the Snyderverse for years, causing the emasculation of superhero films? Wow. Okay. So we're going to go there. Okay. No, because number one, I don't think I was unfair to any of those movies. I understand that people enjoyed those movies. I was not a particular fan of all of them. I liked some of them. I did not like some of the other ones. Uh, I don't think that my words about the Snyderverse caused the emasculation of superhero films, which I don't. I also don't particularly think happened. I understand that there is a line that's been drawn in the sand between the Snyderverse and other movies, and that has largely been drawn by fans who like Zack Snyder's movies. I have nothing against people that like Zack Snyder's films, nothing at all. Even if I didn't like all of them, if you will recall, back in the 2020, Zack Snyder's Justice League I thought was a really good movie. I enjoyed that movie. I have watched it since, and I have said subsequently, after seeing the Batman v Superman Extended Edition and after seeing Zack Snyder's Justice League, that Warner Brothers, the studio, is as much to blame for what happened with Zack Snyder's movies as any shortcomings with Zack Snyder himself, because they second guessed everything. They had him make Batman v Superman completely, I think, unintelligible when it comes to the edit. The other edition is a much better version of that film. And I think that the studio is the reason, as much as Zack Snyder, and probably more than, that those problems happened. But the reason that there are no more Snyderverse films is because they didn't make enough money. Not enough people went to go see them. That is the reason why. It is not because critics said that they weren't very good. And Warner Brothers said, well, the critics don't like it. This is going to be a great universe, but the critics don't like it, so we're going to trash everything. The box office is the reason why. And people say critics don't. people like to blame critics for box office when a movie doesn't do well, but when a movie does do well, they say it's in defiance of the critics. So we are like Schrodinger's reason for the failure of movies. The success of a movie is either a middle finger to critics, and people say, "See, you guys don't matter," and then when a movie doesn't do good, they say it's a critic's fault. Which one is it? Because it can't be both. So, no, I don't feel any guilt for sharing my honest opinion, which every opinion that I share is my honest opinion of a movie, like it or not, whatsoever. And I do not believe, certainly, that any perceived emasculation of superhero films was a direct result of what happened with Zack Snyder's movies. So, thank you for your comment. Dutch Road Movie says, I liked the 2 hour studio logo video you did a year ago. I hope you will do a sequel. There are a lot more logos. I put some suggestions in the comment of video. Thank you, Dutch Road Movies. I appreciate that. I spent more time on that video than I have spent on any other video in the history of this channel. And I have noticed that views have gone up over time, but it did not get a huge amount of engagement. So I don't know if there will be a sequel, but I'm glad that you liked it because that was part of the deal. Was like I'm glad it found its audience. So I don't know if I'll do a sequel just because of the time that'd be required to do it and the what I've got back from the first one. But I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I was actually happy to see where I think it's found an audience over time. Aditya Humnabadkar, apologize if I got that incorrect, says, what's up with the Batman Part 2 at this point? We'd seen an 80 years old young Batman. Is it going to get canceled? Love your work as always. I mean, no, it sounds like it's happening. Full steam ahead. They say that they've got a script. Robert Pattinson seems excited to do it. I mean, he's even said at this point he's not the young Batman anymore. I think it's a shame that it has taken so long to get the Batman Part 2 off the ground. But I see no indication right now that it's not going to happen. I think it's just been very slow to develop. Mike Gibbons says, no question, just support. Thanks for the entertainment and graphs every week. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Let's see. Wells 009 says, if you could bring one movie to 4K Blu-ray that hasn't yet hit the format, which one would you pick? My choice would be Ridley Scott's The Duelists. That's a good one. It's tough because I can't think off the top of my head what movies have a Blu-ray version and what movies don't have a Blu-ray version. I think at this point most of them do. Honestly, I would pick a movie that I know not only is not on Blu-ray, but never made it off DVD. So I'd pick a movie like What About Bob, which is a great Richard Dreyfuss, Bill Murray comedy from the 90s that is very difficult to find and I know does not have an HD version, or Shattered Glass, which I've talked about on this show very many times before, which is a movie starring Hayden Christensen. That is a great movie and does not have, to my knowledge, a Blu-ray version. So yeah, it would be a movie that I think, deserves to make this jump to the next generation. And those are two that I have. I still have those DVDs because I don't have Blu-ray versions of those movies. Harv's K says, don't forget Thanksgiving, the Eli Roth horror film. That one's actually pretty good, and I can see that being an annual favorite for some of us. I liked Thanksgiving. I saw it last year or 2 years ago when it came out. I think I was in New Zealand at the time, so as I recall, I didn't do a full review of it, but I enjoyed it. I think that's a fun one, and I think for people that are into that kind of movie, that's a great annual tradition. GC America SS says, Top Gun Maverick made money, then Hollywood doesn't make anymore, yet push movies that don't make money but seem to be virtuous to Hollywood instead. USA spoke, so why doesn't Hollywood listen? I mean, there have been movies that made money after Top Gun Maverick came out. There were also movies before Top Gun Maverick that didn't make any money. And I mean, Tom Cruise is saying that they say they're making another one. Apparently at Paramount, they're working on another Top Gun Maverick movie. I don't think that Hollywood looked at all the money they made with Top Gun Maverick and said, no more of that. I just think that, I mean, it took what? So Top Gun came out in 1986. It took like almost 40 years to get one Top Gun sequel made. I think that it sounds like they're going to do another one, but Tom Cruise has been busy jumping off cliffs and motorcycles and stuff. Like, again, this whole perceived thing about Hollywood choosing not to make movies that make money, I don't get it. I don't understand it. So I appreciate your question, but I don't agree with the premise. Maple Street Movie says, if you could travel back in time and meet your mom or your dad in high school, who would you choose and why? You meeting them won't change your future. I think it would be super weird to meet either of them. I know less about my dad and what he was like when he was younger. And my mom, I know more of her family, and I've heard more of her. If you don't know, I grew up with just basically just my mom around all the time. So I've heard more stories about her high school years, and I've met her high school friends, and I don't really know anything about my dad in high school. So I think that I would choose my dad because it would be interesting. Plus, just to see, like, did we share any characteristics alike? Were we at all similar at that age? So yeah, I just think on a just sort of personal knowledge level, I'd rather meet my dad, but I think that'd be super weird either way. Benjamin Burrow says, I think Oscar had to have done poorly because Sylvester Stallone was an action star. It's a shame it isn't one of the most iconic comedies of the 90s. I take 90 minutes to watch it whenever, wherever. Yeah, that's what I've heard about it. It just was kind of a victim of expectation. That's why I think I would enjoy seeing it. Zach Archer says, sorry if you've answered this before. How do viewings from people with memberships like Regal Unlimited or AMC A-List factor into box office numbers? I mean, it's a common question here on the channel. Again, my understanding is that that is something that is arranged between those chains and the studios. But from everything I've read, it's not a cost that gets passed on to the studio. It's more of a thing that the studios would make up, or the theater chain would make up whatever difference there might be for offering a monthly membership versus a ticket by ticket sale. The same amount would go to the studios, and the theater's hoping that by being a member, you're going to come to the theater more often and you're going to buy popcorn, or best of all, you don't come at all and they just get to pocket the money that you spent. But from what I've read and what I've researched and what I've listened to other people say, it really doesn't make much difference to the studios. It's all about the theater and their profit margin. Or the studio has worked out some special deal with the theater that we don't necessarily know the details of. Domus says, have you ever fallen in love with a character from a movie, TV show where you actually thought, if I meet someone like her, that will be it? I'm done looking. Why her, and are you over it? Mine was Spike from Buffy. Yeah, Joey Potter from Dawson's Creek, Katie Holmes. Especially, I mean, that movie came out, I think, when I was or show came out when I was 15 or 16 years old. Yeah. As somebody who saw a lot of himself in the character of Dawson, high school kid, kind of geeky, loves Steven Spielberg, wants to go into the movie industry when he grows up. The idea of just like, wow, if there was a neighbor, if my neighbor was like really cute and kind of into me, and we kind of this flirtatious thing back and forth. Yeah, especially in my teenage years, I was like, man, if I could find Katie Holmes slash Joey Potter, that's it. That's my dream girl. And over time though, especially after the whole Pacey thing, kind of fell out of it because that's how it goes. I should have learned my lessons in life from Dawson's Creek and not just the beginning seasons. Damian Barriga says, what's your favorite movie audience reaction in a comedy? Um, I remember when I saw Anchorman in a theater, the laughter that I remember hearing in the theater and also my laughter, it was the most I ever remember hearing an audience laugh ever in a theater. And it was the most I remembered ever laughing in a theater. That's probably my most memorable theater experience with a comedy because, Anchorman, people don't remember this necessarily. Anchorman was not a particularly successful film when it came out, the first one. It caught on a lot afterwards. And so I remember seeing that in the theater, and it was still a pretty crowded theater, and just thinking it was the funniest movie I'd ever seen in my life. So Anchorman, and then I remember I've always said this is funny. It kind of goes to a different time. I remember when I saw the first Rush Hour in a theater. It was the first movie I remember seeing where the title card came up and people clapped. Like the first Rush Hour got an ovation when I saw it in the theater. This is what 1998. And that was the first movie I remember because it kind of has a high energy ending and people literally clapped at the end of that movie. And it's just like, wow, everybody really loved this movie. It did. It was a pretty funny movie, especially at the time. Mark Brierly says, what's the furthest distance you think is reasonable to travel to see a film in limited release? Well, I'm a bad person to ask because I personally drive often uh, 3 to 6 hours from where I live to see it. But that's because it's my job. If it wasn't my job, I think it just depends on how bad you want to see the movie. I would say it's reasonable no matter what movie it is, to drive up to 2 hours away. Like, I get it. Once you get past 2 hours, I'd be like, okay, what movie is it? Why? Okay, I get it. Or like, oh, really? For that one? I mean, I support anybody wanting to see any movie that they want to see, but I think anything over 2 hours, I would ask a follow up question. 2 hours or less, no follow up. 2 or more hours, I would at least want to know more. Christopher Brickner says Running Man has surprisingly low review scores for an Edgar Wright film on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, while Now You See Me 3 is surprisingly high. I mean, I think that just goes down to expectations, because when I checked it last, let's see if it's changed since earlier today. And I think this just goes with the territory. Running Man has 63% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Now You See Me, Now You Don't has 61% on Rotten Tomatoes. So they're basically the same score on the tomato meter. Let me plug in my, where's my, I have a plugin that tells me what the average score is. Right now, Running Man, according to my plugin, has an average critical score of 6.4. Now You See Me has an average score of 5.7. So the critics average rating on Now You See Me, Now You Don't is actually lower than it is on the Running Man, but the tomato meter is slightly higher. I think that very much goes into what a lot of directors have to deal with, which is expectation. Two almost identically received movies, but Edgar Wright is like, oh wow, that's way low, and Now You See Me is like, oh wow, that's surprisingly high, just because of what was expected of both of them. So it doesn't really surprise me. I figured Running Man would probably be in the 60 to 70% range. I think that's probably fair. Now You See Me, Now You Don't. I have not. I haven't seen any of those movies actually, but that does surprise me because, as I recall, the first two movies just weren't that well received. El Greco says, "What are your thoughts on critics who? Oh man, what are you trying to do here? What are your thoughts on critics who inject right wing all the time, such as Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, etc.?" I mean, I don't, because here's the thing: people clip stuff out and then they send it to people, and then they go and it starts a thing. Like, I'm not trying to start anything with anybody. I'm really not. All I'll say is that we just have different philosophies on what we do. I just I don't I do not choose to approach what I do from that particular direction, and I don't necessarily think that it's always useful to the discourse, but I'm not going to sit here and, trash anybody, because then it gets sent to people, and then it gets clipped out, and then it gets thrown up for somebody, and then it gets reacted to, and then people get brigaded and sent, and it becomes a whole thing. I have no interest in participating in that. It is I'm going to use a big word. It is anathema to me. I have so little interest in participating in that. All I'm concerned about is what I say and what I do on my channel, and offering the best viewpoint that I can, that is honest to who I am and what I want to put out there. And whatever anybody else wants to do, obviously, this channel is small potatoes compared to those guys. They have built a massive following doing what they do and sharing what they share and taking the stances that they want to take, and they are more than free to do that. It's not for me to comment on that, because it has no consequence to me. I've often said I understand that the approach that I take is not going to draw as big of an audience. It's not going to, because it's not quite as eye grabbing, etc. And that's the choice that I make. But it's it's their choice to do it. Like I said, I think sometimes the discourse can get a little too crazy around stuff, and I think that sometimes you can do stuff that fuels that fire. But if that's their choice, that's their choice. There are other creators here, and they have built big channels doing it. So, I'm concerned with me and what I do and what this channel is, not what everybody else is doing. And the last thing I want to do is start some sort of a flame war with other stuff. It's just not. I'm so not interested in that. I've said it before. I'm 42 years old, man. I'll be 43 in less than 2 months. Life's too short. I don't care. I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to be flippant about your question, but it's just not even something I want to get into. Christopher Brickner says, fun fact, since 2020, we've had 0 Star Wars films, yet Dan Trachtenberg's been able to direct 3 Predator films in the same time frame. How is that possible? Dan Trachtenberg had three great ideas for Predator movies: Prey and Killer of Killers and Predator Badlands. I mean, he obviously came with three great ideas. Disney, and we talked about this many times before, they just, Star Wars is at a bit of a juncture and they can't figure out what they want to do. And I think that Dan Trachtenberg came in locked and loaded with a very specific vision about what he wanted to do. And I think that's what's been missing from a lot of from Disney, from Marvel, and from Star Wars right now, is that very specific vision. I think that Dan Trachtenberg just had it locked and loaded, and that's great. Zach Martin says, "Hey Dan, was wondering if you've been to the Academy Museum in LA. They have an amazing Jaws exhibit running through summer 2026. No, but I am making it a priority to get to LA before that exhibit is gone because I have to see it. I've heard so many great things about it." All right, we're getting to the end. I would ask, please, peace and love, but no more questions because I am flabbergasted that we've gone 2 hours here, and it was completely unexpected. So thank you very much. Andrew Abraham says, "Do you take fan mail? If so, do you have an address to send mail to? And what's your favorite piece of fan mail or fan reaction you've had?" I don't currently. I used to have a PO box. I don't have it anymore, just because I didn't get a whole lot, and honestly, like it's everybody is so nice and generous with the super chats, and people that are members here on the channel, and people that are members on Patreon, and people that spend their time watching what I do here. Because if you watch, even if you just watch my videos with ad revenue, etc., or if you click a link and go to one of my sponsors, that helps me and that helps to pay my bills. Like I don't. I've never really felt comfortable asking for more than that because I feel like everybody's already so generous. So I don't really do fan mail at the moment, or at least not anymore. I will say I believe somebody sent this. I have a film can, like an old film can, like you used to put a film reel into. I think somebody worked at a movie theater and they said, "I found this, this with a bunch of stuff in it. Are you interested in it?" And I'll take any film related, even if it's just like, "You don't want it anymore?" Sure, I'll take it. And it's got a bunch of 35 millimeter film strips in it. And I need to find somewhere that prints 35 millimeter film, because I've done the, unspooling thing where I look at it up against the light, and it's trailers for, like The Thing, and I think there's an ET trailer in there. I don't know if they're original trailers. Alien is in there. They might be re-release trailers, and there's some like short films in there. And I just want to have that printed, just to say, "Hey, I've got a scan of this 35 millimeter stuff," but I haven't found anybody that does that. But it's fun to know that I have actual celluloid with trailers from these movies that I love on there, and I appreciate that. That was a really cool thing. Christopher Brickner says, "Since watching all the Tron films, which one do you think is the best? I like Tron Legacy most. Unsurprisingly, it has the best director, Joseph Kosinski." Yeah, I would agree, having rewatched all of them recently. Tron Legacy, I think, is the best one. I don't think it's an amazing movie, but I think it's the most, technologically, I think it's really good. And then I think story-wise, it's the best of the three. So I'd say Tron Legacy as well. Tyler says, "Who is your favorite Toy Story villain?" They all have their own twist, but I think it's the most psychologically complex. Has got to be Lotso Huggenbear. Sid is sort of a misunderstood kid. I mean, he's cruel, he's vindictive, but I don't think Sid had a great family life. There's a lot more to go on with Sid, but I think it'd be kind of sad. Was Al's Toy Barn. Was that the second one? I think, yeah. He was just kind of a dope. I think that Lotso Huggenbear for me is easily the most complex villain that I want to see more of. I'd watch a Lotso Huggenbear full origin movie. Alu says, "Yesterday was my birthday and I wanted to give you a small gift. You're so thoughtful with everything you do, and say we appreciate you." Well, thank you very much, and happy birthday to you. I much appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed your day. Domus says, "I spent my week snack money today, but totally worth it. Had a blast. Thanks, Dan. Cheers from Brazil." Oh, thank you so much. Please don't spend your snack money on me. Snacks are delicious. Much better than me. It's the imposter syndrome again, but I love snacks. So it's like, that's like the ultimate compliment. Maybe even more than the Ebert stuff. You spent your snack money on me? Thank you so much. And then I think this is our last question. Sam Pinella says, "Seeing your Violent Ends interview, I was wondering if you had any old scripts in a drawer you're interested in dusting off. if the opportunity arises. No, nothing active, nothing that I've written. I've never written a feature script. I've had fun writing stuff before. I used to write some shorts for Channel 101, and I wrote an episode of our original series of Interns with Field, or Interns of Field, when we were at Screen Junkies Plus, and that was a lot of fun. And I've been happy with stuff that I've written in the past, and I've thought about it before, but I've just never really hit on an idea that I'm like, yeah, no, I love that idea. I want to do that. No, nothing in the drawer, nothing, kind of hiding away. But yeah, I think that if I have an idea, I know people that I could reach out to and get opinions on. And, it's not like if I had an idea that I'd be like, oh, well, I can't do anything with that. It's just never really come to mind. And it's largely because I'm here, doing this. Man, I mean, I feel bad because I haven't gotten into any of the other chat questions, but it's also 2 hours since we started. So I kind of feel like we should wrap it up. This is the longest live show I've ever done, and I've completely blown away by everybody that asked questions. Again, this was just kind of supposed to be a show where it's just like, people might ask something. So thank you to everybody that asked a question. Thank you to everybody that sent in a super chat. I'm sorry I couldn't get to more of the regular chat questions. I hope that this was enlightening for you. I hope that I navigated some. I mean, I do feel like I earned my keep this week because those are some of those were some hefty questions, but I feel like I may have navigated it all right. So thank you to everybody, and like I said, let's not get too wrapped up in feuds and people that disagree with. Let's just unite in love for movies and let everything else shake out the way that it is. So I appreciate everybody sending in questions, spending your time here with me. Anybody who watched or listened to this whole thing, thank you very much. I don't know when the next live show is going to be, because next week I'm going to be on the road. I've got a chance to see Wicked and also Marty Supreme, and I want to catch both of those movies, especially because I get to see both of them a little early. So I'm going to be on the road next week, and then the week after is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which is not only the day before Thanksgiving, but also I'm going to be trying to figure out how to fit in a bunch of Stranger Things episodes right around the holidays. That's Netflix's little gift to all of us critics this year. So I may be able to get a live show in next week, and the week after I may not be. Stay tuned. I'll try to at least announce that in a community post. But if I don't see you the next couple weeks, then I will be back shortly thereafter. We'll take more questions. I'll have some more stuff prepared. Maybe we'll fold in a viewer question episode every 4 to 6 weeks, because obviously there are people that wanted to ask questions, way more than I anticipated. But thanks to everybody who sent one in today. Please stay safe. If I don't see you live before Thanksgiving, have a great holiday. Of course, I'll still be here doing charts and pre-recorded reviews and all that stuff. But until next time, see you then. Take care, everybody. And thanks. Bye.